also appreciate the feedback, people that keep on participating in this show throughout using our various social media platforms. We also want to thank you so much. We even had a poll question, and that is, once again, let's first take a look at the poll question, then we can look at some of the views that are coming in. But as we do that, one interesting view that is in here, it is actually media in Uganda have been going in opposite direction. Can every source get editors for their news? That is coming in, that is before exposing to the media. However, there is no name. So please, if you're being part of any feedback, please ensure you give us your name and preferably where you are. That is, share your views on the role of the media that is in addressing post-lockdown effects. Share your views on the role of the media in addressing post-lockdown effects. And you can use our various channels. That is our YouTube channel, but also our Twitter page and the WhatsApp number, which is also on your screen. This morning, we are privileged to be discussing a very interesting topic, and this is the fate of private schools amidst the reopening. We all remember that was Monday last week, the 10th, when officially schools were opened. But one of the things we must understand is the education sector was more hit in all sectors, because close to 2 years, many of these institutions were really locked down. For example, pre-primary was completely under lockdown. But then we have private and public schools. So the government schools, teachers were still getting pay. Government schools, they are not in rented facilities. Government schools, government gives them a number of aid here and there, capitation grant. Now they got renovation and minor repairs, about 1.5 million that was given to each school. But for the private schools, who comes to their rescue? And with me on set this morning to discuss this is the National Secretary, that is Federation of Non-State Education Institutions in Uganda, Patrick Kaboyo. Patrick, you're most welcome to our studios.
Thank you, Mr. Chirabo. Happy New Year, because we have not met since the year started.
We are still in the first month of the year.
Yes.
Happy New Year, and thank you so much for honoring our invitation amidst the chilly weather outside.
Most disturbing is the traffic jam on the road. It was so hard for me to maneuver, drive, and reach here in time. But all said, it's, I think, because learners are returning to school, every parent is running around town.
Patrick, we know that if there are people that were happy, are you in the education sector, the private education sector, because for a long time you're having a lot of difficulties, and now it was very clear schools were to open on the 10th, and it was a full blast reopening. First, give us a brief assessment of this first week from the perspective of private practitioners.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kirabo. First is to register appreciation to government. One, for, of course, they have done what they are supposed to do, but to open us fully is to open the economy, meaning that the learners are going back, the parents will be able to look for fees, which is a big challenge. But the suppliers who are giving schools food, grains, water, different scholastic materials are now in business, meaning that whoever is associated with schools is able to eke a small living here and there. But that said, the first week really has been, in most schools, a week of orientation, a week of returning to normal, and of course there could be a few schools that have started teaching full board right away from the previous week. But a good school or an organized school ought to have started their teaching learning processes after orientation. And I shouldn't forget to recognize and thank all those school administrators, managers that have had very good ears to listen to the parents of all categories, who have come sharing and explaining how they are hard up, how they cannot pay 100% tuition, but also to give a request to all those that are listening to us that it is not a good thing for you to be rigid in your school much as it is yours. You have to be flexible and stagger those payments so that parents can be able to take back their children to school, bearing in mind that on average, every parent you see in your school at least has 1 or 2 children who are reporting in another school, save for young parents. But also to give a serious caution that COVID has taught us that things are quite hard, and if you are a young person, maybe you have finished university or you are about to graduate, please hold on giving birth and don't bring more life in this world, because things are tight, things are hard, and your child deserves the best. So countrywide, we need to have this family planning and reduction of numbers as a big campaign, because when you combine the babies that have been born during COVID, and you also look at the fertility rate of this country, definitely those young people are going to cause pressure in classrooms, because infrastructure is not expanding as we think, and all those learners will need to sit and learn. So to avoid that pressure, government must really plan for reducing or maintaining a population at a manageable rate.
Population control programs.
Yes.
Because we may not stop people from producing, but at least guide them to have children by choice, not by chance, and those that they can manage. Well, those are very interesting words from the National Secretary, Federation of Non-State Education Institutions, a body that brings together all people that are in the private business of education, owners of schools, that is to say. Patrick,
yes.
There's been a major concern. We hear that turn-up has been low, that many children that have been in private schools or learners are now opting for government schools, and that this has a great impact on you in the private sector.
You see, sometimes our communities are not so well sensitized. Reason being that countrywide civic education levels are quite low. This is a country where the biggest number of population does not appreciate the value of education. This is a country where all schools, public and private, have the school mission, vision, objectives. But if you, Mr. Chirabo, went to the school where your son goes and you asked a number of parents or even teachers to tell you the mission, vision, objectives of that school, they will not be able to explain fully what that school focuses on. So if a group of parents in this country valued education, there would be few cases of having those learners not reporting, because 2 years of not being in school is quite a long time. Secondly, you've heard of pregnant girls not going back to school and discussions of how they should go. That is an indicator of poverty levels, because you should ask a question: whose daughter is this that has got pregnant? If you press, you'll find that this is the girl whose parents could not afford to give small monies in terms of buying this, buying that, and she meets a border rider and provides, and what comes as a result is the pregnancy. But also as a country, we need to discuss and deepen understanding of the border menace. We can't be defined as a border economy. We can't be defined by borders, because whoever rides a motorbike is in his youthful age, very productive age, meaning that we have to translate that energy into production. But as long as we have them continue riding recklessly, impregnate our young girls, of course they earn from hand to mouth, So there has to be a conversion of that border economy to a meaningful economy. But what you asked again points to that. We know that when you read the National Development Plan 3, it talks about our economy being private sector led. Our economy is driven by the private sector. But as the Lord's Prayer says, that give us today our daily bread. For 2 years we have not seen that daily bread on the plates, on the tables of the private schools directors, meaning that government ought to have taken an immediate or short-term process to ensure that at least every school, at minimum, could have received 20 to 30 million to pay back, and this money would have been used to buy sanitizers, renovate. As it gave capitation to government schools, it should also have given a hand on 3 counts. One is that the economy is private sector led. Okay. That 2, we have a public-private partnership which is not implemented but implemented selectively, leaving out education as the chief investment hub for this country, but now they are looking at manufacturers, those who are doing work that is not connecting to the human capital development. The third issue I want to talk about is what was happening in the years past, which was the public-private partnership arrangement or giving money to USE schools that were educating boys and girls in the countryside. That money was withdrawn in a phased manner because HE, the president, was told that it is not giving any value. I think the president was misadvised because a good number of boys and girls who were getting education through USE, supported by government, were able to complete and have a certificate, were able to remain in school, and they could not give birth. Now that the phasing was throwing them out, and they are still out, those are the very, very boys and girls who are now in giving birth because there is no school to contain them, or there is no program to keep them in school. So for us to reverse that trend, we have to think about reviving the public-private partnership. Yes, as a program.
Patrick, well said, and talked about the few challenges that have to be addressed. One of the issues that has been raised are the exorbitant fee being charged by the private schools in this country. And one would say that explains why now parents are choosing to take their children to government schools. Of course, that is a bit a debatable issue regarding standards and how best that. But you're taking parents hostage. They have no choice to just wake up. The ministry came out very clearly and gave you guidelines that if you're to increase school fees, this is the procedure to follow. Then the First Lady and also Minister for Education and Sports came out and said, maintain the fee structure that you had prior to COVID-19.
Thank you. When we discuss costs or education financing, sometimes we mix issues. One is that there are those statutory obligations that a school is supposed to meet. One, paying salaries for teaching and non-teaching staff. Two, paying for utilities in the school, that is water, electricity, internet, name it. Then the other costs, which are running costs. A school that is private in this country receives zero support from government. But schools that are public are funded by government 100%. And you shouldn't forget that we have children or learners in both public and private schools. There are those public schools, secondary, that are charging higher costs than private schools, even when government extends to them lots of money for running those schools. So it is not right, therefore, for the country or for those watching us to think that private schools are overcharging. There are charges in every school, public or private. But in terms of adhering to what the First Lady and Minister of Education and Sports guided, I want to say that from findings we have gotten as FENA, people are adhering and the cries indeed are not there. But of course, if a few of them are there, I think they are having discussions with school administrators based on how they are supposed to pay. And I want to state that we need to have an honest discussion of school charges, bring it to the table in an honest manner, look at the cost-benefit analysis, look at the cost of educating a scientist or an artist in this country, and bear that cost squarely to arrive at what one should pay. They should be a liking or a borrowing from what is done in universities, because if you're on a graduate course or undergraduate course, they give you what you are supposed to pay and they break it. Functional fees, this fees, that fees, and they give you exactly what the money you pay does, including guild fees. But we still have charges in our schools that are hidden, that cannot be explained, and this counts to education accountability, that we should not ask for accountability only from one side, but we should be accountable in all aspects, the way we charge, the way we manage this money charged, and the way government should respond, because this comes to explain that there are those schools that are public. They really have infrastructure that they built 2-3 years back, but they continue charging highly and you don't see any infrastructure being put up. Then you ask, where does that money go? But you'll also go to other schools. They show you a storied building of about 4 stories. They show you the new chapel. They show you the new dormitory. They show you the bus. They show you the sports pitches. But other schools, parents keep paying lots of money. You don't see any changes in the school, even when government keeps pumping in money. So issues of education financing and costs, Mr. Chirabo, have to be discussed.
Well explained. Of course, I love the fact that you've tried to give that comparison between government-aided and the private schools, the charges, and actually where we can call for accountability here and there for us to arrive at an acceptable amount of fee. Patrick, we know a number of your members have not reopened for school. I was looking at what happened in Tinda, that is Everest. Everest there, where for them they said, actually that is in Ruwero, Everest Primary School and Everest College, pay daily. The day you study, the money you pay. They broke down the fees to daily payments if a parent cannot afford a lump sum. But we also saw East High, where parents came on reporting debt with students or learners, and they are told, we can do what we can to refund your money, but we are not opening. We also saw a number that just said we cannot open, and was very clear. In Kampala alone, I'm told over 10 schools are not reopening. Go to Ruwero, over 20 schools have not reopened, and neither are they, so they are gone. How best can we avert this problem? We don't even know if some are going to open, then later they may close along the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chirabo, and those viewing us. I want to state categorically that no school should be started to close. A school should start to remain open until that time, because when you are transiting from one level of education to another, they ask, where were you for this level, where were you for this level? But sometimes you'll find that the school where you went to no longer exists. That has an implication. 2, that schools should not be run as businesses, but they should be run as entities that offer services. 3 is that there has to be a regulatory framework that emphasizes sustainability and continuity of education institutions. Regulation should be both internal and external. Internal is that a school should have structures and systems, management committees, oversight committees, and governance structures that should ask those who founded whether they are living to the vision and mission, because closing has never been a mission of any school in this country or world over. But externally, government should be able to come in not to reprimand, but to support, to give an environment that supports these schools to spur growth and remain relevant. And to answer your question, these schools were not shocked. They knew that at a certain point in time, they would close. Why then are some open and some are closed? So this means that those that are open are supposed to offer lessons to their colleagues that are in the same system of running schools. And this is the reason whoever is listening to us as a director, this week on Thursday, 20th, from 9 to 1, we have organized a training, a free training for directors of private schools by a consulting team from Nairobi to polish processes of school leadership, management, administration, succession. We shall be at Kolping Hotel, Bombo Road. This is a program that is going to offer schools to remain open and not closed. And these schools, for your information, Mr. Chirabo, also have issues of intra-capital flight. That you collect fees from learners, instead of investing it in the school, by expanding the school or paying your teachers very well, you find that you are maybe diversifying, going to
the transport
construct Mizigo, you are going to buy things that are not school linked. And when those pile on you, the school will automatically collapse. And because of that, we are on the lookout that COVID has taught people not to invest in one aspect. We encourage as a federation that investment in education should be specifically for education ventures and activities. Lest many schools are going to close, but also to state that there are some of those schools that used to approach our office last year and the other year. We wrote to commercial banks in Mbarara, in Luwero, in Chegegwa, requesting for a grace period and engaging the banks not to take over those schools. But by grace of God, the small, medium, and micro enterprise fund that government has given can be accessed by school directors.
Patrick,
yes.
In listening to your explanation, you seem in one or the other to cast the blame on proprietors, owners of these schools. Is this an issue to do with management? Because many of these schools are saying they didn't get assistance from government. And some point the problem on government. 2 years of lockdown, no assistance given to us. I remember some of your members were before the Parliamentary Education Committee, and they had a suggestion that government gives each of these schools at least 100 million payable in a period of 5 years with an annual interest rate of 5%. This didn't work out.
I want to tell you very frankly, I'm not apportioning blame, but I'm discussing issues nationally, both sides. There are schools in this country that are at a certain level. There are those that are beginning. There are those that are struggling. There are those that businessmen have taken over because I have my school. Chirabo, you have your money, you come and take over my school, and you sell through with it. But all schools are not run the same way. And what we are saying as FENE is that can there be a program for sustainably running schools? But we also know that by design, different directors would not be at liberty to share their magic styles, how they run their schools, and they keep it to themselves in a bid to maintain competition. But COVID has taught us that competition will not help us, because the big, the small, the medium were all affected. So what we are saying is that schools should be run as schools, as education institutions, and based on the corporate governance principles that have checks and balances. We need teachers to be involved in the running of those schools. We need parents to have a voice in the running of schools. Yes, we have the schools, but it serves no purpose for you to say, this is my school. But if it is your school, you are not the one who is the student, who is the parent, you are running it with others. So corporate governance principles tell us that there have to be board of directors, who are the foundation body, board of governors, which is the governance structure. And the board of governors should have different committees for academics, for welfare, for other issues to help the school run. However, there are those schools that do not have them, and they are running. Then some director who is listening to us could say, but I don't have those structures you are talking about, and I have remained afloat. I think the regulation now should come to ensure that all education systems are running concurrently, whether small, big, or newly started. They should be supported based on the systems, and some of those systems we have are reflected in the basic requirements and minimum standards booklet or manual that the Ministry of Education provided. But suffice to say, some of those standards now need to be reviewed. Need to be reviewed to suit the COVID challenge, need to be reviewed to fit the technology and innovations that we are in. But that said, I think the way we are moving, we are going to succeed, and those which close it, schools that close it, will resume slowly by slowly when they get credit.
Patrick, let's look at this reopening now. Previously, private schools were blamed for not being honest. We have Omicron cases are rising. Today I saw about people that succumbed to COVID, about 17. And we see the positivity rate is also high. Let's look at private schools whose main aim is maximization of profits, their ability to implement to the latter the standard operating procedures to allow smooth operation, but also to protect the learners in these schools.
You see, we cannot operate traditionally or conventionally. We should follow the trends and follow the time. The time now tells us that whether you are in public school or private school, this learner is not only a learner, is your client. Is the one who makes your school stand out, is the one who sustains your school. And for you to sustain that school, you must comply. So compliance requires that you observe the SOPs, let the masks be worn, let there be water, and Omicron or COVID will be dealt with. But that said, I have gotten information from our colleagues upcountry that there are cases of corona upcountry, in fact. And because of that, I have also gotten some information that there are learners who have not yet reported this week in schools, because earlier on you said that the turn-up is not so as expected. Some have not turned up because they still have cases of COVID, and they will be returning when they are okay. But that said, I want to tell you that during the first and second lockdown, schools would conceal information about COVID cases for fear of losing these clients, but also because of ignorance that they had not gotten information. But I have heard very many education leaders, including the DO of Wakiso, Mr. Chinj, telling parents and people that please report cases of COVID. Your schools will not be closed. I think from us, we also say report cases of COVID. You will have the best practice of having reported and not concealed. And I think the Ministry of Education and Sports should have a program to recognize those schools that report cases. It shouldn't stop at, yes, we got cases and we got to know the numbers, so what? But if we get those reporting recognized, we shall interest all those schools up country to keep reporting, and Ministry of Health will get to mitigate these issues properly. But to say that this time there have been effort to surveil. So the surveillance mechanisms are being promoted at the Ministry of Education. What is only lacking is that the participatory approach in terms of involving actors from the civil society, actors from the religious groups, and actors from the parents groups. There has to be a concerted community framework that brings everybody on board to report and surveil, and not to say, those are Chirabo things, those are their things, the cases are there. Everybody should be concerned to report after being reached out to and involving them fully to own up the process. But I want to tell you that so far, so good, apart from the fewer cases that are being reported, but they are manageable, and we hope that this term will conclude and learners return, and we also go to second term without challenges.
Very hopefully there is no need for you to conceal cases of COVID-19 in your school, because this will greatly even create confidence, I believe, in the public that in case my child contracts COVID, then this school is responsible enough to allay the fears of thinking that they would hide this person in the dormitory and only to pick this child when maybe it is really severe because of no treatment being given to them. So that is one of the encouragements that comes in from Patrick Kaboyi, who happens to be, that is the National Secretary of Federation of Non-State Education Institution, a body that brings together all private school owners in this country. We are looking at the fate of private schools amidst reopening of schools. What are the challenges they are facing? How best can these people that ventured into the education sector to educate, but of course also to make a living here and there? Patrick, are you still for service or is it profit?
Service. Service first.
I love the smile.
It's service first. Service first.
Service first.
Yes.
Well, many people now assume that this school is school that profitable, this business, because the rate at which we are seeing schools mushrooming day and day, it seems it's one of the ventures you go into if you want to make good money.
The economists who are listening know what profit means, and for you to get profit, it means that you will have saved. After collecting, you've paid every expense, and what you remain with, that's your profit. But I want to tell you that every parent who is listening to us now, including myself, we have balances in every school where our children are going. For you who has no balance, God loves you so much. But most of us have considerable balances to pay in the month of February, even the month of Jan. The other issue is for every director who is running a school right now is looking at a deficit, because they are collecting and parents have no money really to pay as we speak. So government here really should come in very fast with interventions to help education get back to its feet. The issue of access to midterm resources from NSSF is one good one. But we have also heard from the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development that it will give 100,000 shillings to every teacher in private school. That is a very welcome step, and we want to thank the leadership and technical leadership at that ministry. But beyond that, we would also expect to hear from the national ICT or Minister for ICT to say from February up to July, we are giving every education institution free access to internet so that these learners can get back to their feet and learn well. We would also hear good programs that for us now we are cutting these costs, and we at least want every classroom in this country to have a functional desktop computer in every class. Because we are going digital, we have heard of online learning, but how will these people be able to download work, the abridged curriculum by NCDC, which is sent to people's email addresses, and it should be downloaded? How will they download that material? But if every classroom has a desktop, the teachers will download. So that should be one intervention that government should lessen. Then the other issue is to ensure that whatever we are collecting now should be focused to education. I want to be so selfish with this point of education, because if you are focusing on building a human capital development system for the country, you don't start anywhere, but you invest in the education of this country, and you don't go far. You concentrate on the hardware, but also focus on the software, teachers, learners, systems, policies, programs, including feeding, because these learners need to be supported and facilitated.
Well,
Yes.
I want to thank you so much, Patrick Kaboyo, who is the National Secretary, Federation of Non-State Education Institutions, that brings together owners of private schools in this country. He made a proper appeal to government that is on the internet, but also making education the #1 priority at such a time for human capital development. We continue to pray and believe that we shall have a smooth sail through this first term of reopening and the second. But don't forget, please take your jab, go get vaccinated, and perfect the standard operating procedures. Have a lovely day. Sports is up next. Good morning.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Transact and win money after money with Airtel Money. 1.5 billion shillings in cash prizes up for grabs.
I'm Sendika Duamachin, a student of Chambogo University. I've been a lucky winner of 10 million Ugandan shillings, and I'm really excited as I'm ending this year with all that lots of money. Guys, it's real. Just dial *185#.
The more you transact, the higher your chances of winning. Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
Raising voices.
As a mother, my children depend on me to make this world a safer place for them. I'm not afraid to act when I see violence in the home and in my community. I promise to talk to my neighbors and friends about how we can nurture and protect the children.
In this time of COVID, what